Welcome. We're going to start now. This is the next thing in our schedule is a panel discussion, and the title is the role of left out the UC faculty learning community. And so we want to input from our panel, what is that? But also from you. So we'd like some participation. And I'd like to introduce our panel, Manny from UCSC, HHMI professor in MCDB biology. Robin Dunkin from UCSC, a lecturer. Joel Rothman from UCSB. And John Matsui from UC Berkeley. And I'm going to ask them the first question and then open it up to whoever. But my first question is, in your view, what is a faculty learning community? Although all the PIs wrote the grant, I'm not sure it was that exactly clear what it would be. So I think we would like to get sort of form it in our minds a little bit more clearly by the end of today. So
I'm not going to start.
Who's going to start?
Robin has a plane. Robin has a
plane. That doesn't seem right. Okay. Okay. Well, to me, the faculty learning community is going to be a group of people that take the taboo out of liking to teach, for one, for not only ourselves but also departments and others on campus, being out in the open, if you will, about being enthusiastic teachers, which I think is getting a lot better, but it hasn't always been the case. Also providing a place where you can go and talk to other people about teaching. I mean, that is a huge thing. And you know, we have developed at UCSC, we've had this seminar now for a whole year. And that actually has been really great. I mean, we've been meeting every month, and not only does it bring everyone together for an hour a month to get to know each other and talk about teaching, but it also provides a way of getting input. So we've got people that come in and give seminars, of course. Some of you have actually come. And actually just getting new ideas, new evidence-based methods that we can then incorporate. I also think it is very diverse as we can. So it includes graduate students, faculty, lecturers, people from outside our community. So people from the education department. We're now, working with someone from psychology. It's been really a great cross-fostering experiment.
That's pretty good. I want to echo what Robin said about having a support group for people who still think teaching is important, even though they might be research-oriented professors, and normalizing that, right? Normalizing the idea, or renormalizing it, I guess, that if you're a professor, you have, a responsibility to your scholarly work that includes both research and teaching together, and making that generally supported by the environment. And I guess the other thing, when I think of a community, besides that supporting structure, I also think that a community could agree on standards or methods for determining what quality teaching looks like. And I feel like one of the reasons that it's teaching isn't always as valued. I guess I wanted to use a monetary term, like paid for, is that you don't really know what you're paying for. It's hard to tell, when you've taught someone well or when someone has really learned something well. The metrics are still, obviously, we've talked a lot about that today. How do we know what we're doing makes sense? So if a community feels that it wants to support teaching, it wants to know really at a much better level what good teaching looks like and and what that is. And so I feel like that should be kind of a role of our community as well.
Okay, so I think I'm not going to directly answer the question broadly. Instead, I'm going to focus on what I hope we're going to be doing with this particular group, the point of establishing a UC faculty learning community. And I think when we think about what we want to achieve and the meetings we have in the future and the various opportunities we have to get together, I hope we look specifically at what being part of a very large remarkable system of higher education we have, how we can apply the unique aspect of that large system to problems in building faculty learning communities that you don't have available to you if you're at isolated great universities like University of Michigan or whatever. And so what we have is we have tremendous resources of talent, we have obviously a huge budget across the University of California, and we have relative proximity, although California is a big state. But I think we should think about what things specifically we can get out of a faculty learning community that emerge from being part of that big system. So I'm thinking of some of the things, and we touched on some of these through the day. One is, and this is tricky, but because of course we have academic freedom, and every university is of course going to do things their own way, but I still think that there is some degree of commonality in the curriculum in biology, for example, across all the UCs, and I mentioned that earlier. And if we want to tackle problems like one that I'd brought up earlier about this sort of alienating impact of prerequisites for the traditional biology curriculum, which, for example, UC Riverside is kind of getting around by doing these wonderful freshman experiences. We may like to look at the commonalities in the curriculum that we have across the UCs and think about how we might flip things around, change things around, so that students really biology students get a juicy taste of things right off, and not just calculus and chemistry. And so it may help to coordinate across campuses in that regard. And there some other things that I want to think of. This is actually, I'll come back to that later, I think. But the other things that we can look at in terms of a system are common ways we might incentivize, because some of the incentivizing we might want to do does relate to UC policy, and so merits and promotions, and it may be very useful to coordinate on that incentivization. We've heard about it. Cindy spoke of, for example, teaching sabbaticals. When we look at merit promotions, are there ways we can take teaching innovation and agree to some terms on that across the whole system? And then also, Cindy touched on this, and others I think have, that in fact we can we have this potentially huge common pool of financial resource, and if we had a system-wide way of funding a faculty learning community, we could do something that no other university could do, because we have such a large scale there. And another thing that we can do, I think, is share data from our studies. For example, the wonderful data that Mike showed, and Sue and Cindy. I would love to take some of that data, for example, to my faculty or to administration at my university and say, look, this has worked at another UC just down the road, and this would be a good reason to build some incentive for building a program like this.
Let's see, what hasn't been touched on. So, who might participate in this? I would venture to guess that all of us in this room are unsatisfied with the status quo. And so there is a personal/professional commonality to all of us. We see a need to change. And I would say that a faculty learning community consists typically of individuals like ourselves and our colleagues who share that. But there's the will, but the question is what's the way? And I think that the amount of effort that it would take each of us individually to pore over the literature, to discover for ourselves individually models that have worked at other campuses and so on, would be tremendous. So I see great value in this collective effort. There's an efficiency to that. But I also see a faculty learning community system-wide as being a forum to really highlight exemplars. We don't do it. We don't do whatever we do for recognition in the classroom. We make it a Distinguished Teaching Award. That's great. But those sorts of things come about maybe once a year and so on, and we all realize how political those awards are, et cetera. But for those of us who are in the trenches, who are doing the teaching and want to change the status quo, how do we highlight those in a systematic way? How do we do that? How do we share those models, et cetera? And I would say the faculty learning community is really good for that as well. Our training isn't in the area of really, we aren't rewarded for reading the science education literature, most of us. We don't have the training nor the time and so on. And so I would say the faculty learning community should be a place where those who have that training can also translate for practitioners, sort of a translational function. I think that would be very, very important in order to move things more quickly. I think a discussion and a sharing of concerns and limitations on our campuses, and to use exemplars, for example, like the space that Sue has, is really wonderful. And campuses compete, right? UCR has this wonderful teaching space. Berkeley doesn't have anything like that in the sciences. Our spaces are lecture halls with fixed seats. But if we could hold up examples along with data to show that this sort of investment has an impact, I think that's huge. So there's both cooperation, collaboration, but also competition that the learning community could tap into. And it's an efficiency model.
Can we learn from outside our community? I know that the University of Colorado, the University of Washington are spearheading a lot of this education research.
So again, I mean, this is why I wanted to make sure that I hope we can reach a point where we're looking for real concrete deliverables that are really kind of specific for what we have here as a unique consortium of 10 or 9 really, really strong universities. And so I'm involved, a bunch of us are involved in other mini grant kind of efforts like this with HHMI, for example, and many other programs. And there's lots of discussion nationwide about a lot of the issues that have come up that we've talked about here today, for example. And I think what we want to do is distinguish ourselves in this faculty learning community in a way that can do something beyond or special that we wouldn't do just through national discourse, which we'll have, of course, and we are having.
So this is a life science-centric question about prerequisites and the core. So we have, I think all the UCs have a life sciences core that we require students to go through before they get into upper division life science courses. We looked at that this past year in our college executive committee, trying to see if we could streamline the core, if we could reduce it. And ultimately what comes down is all the other UCs do it, so we can't change. And so I think, if this group would be perfect to make some of those changes.
And one of the reasons that's like that is that medical schools require certain courses. And then once given those requirements, you look and you go, well, what order should we put these requirements in? And you don't question the existence of the requirement in the first place.
Students who come in, graduate medical school, to corrupt the whole program for that, and really to stifle innovation, because that's it. It's like, oh, there's not enough room in their schedule.
No, absolutely, that's the same. I don't know if the numbers are like that, but they're probably very similar at many of the campuses.
Yeah, it's a little tangential, but I guess I would, to echo what Joel said, I think there is a will at the Office of the President to support cross-campus innovation. So the Office of the President's supporting Santa Cruz to run a UC Reserves class that all 9 campuses can send students to. And it runs 3 times a year now. And it's modeled on something we were doing at Santa Cruz. And I mean, similarly, like or not like the online course development program that the Office of President is running, there are courses now that are shared among all 9 campuses that came out of that effort. And so there was an effort to think about what is shared among the campuses and to try to have some curricular innovation that's built around that. Now these are the innovations around how we teach and around best practices in teaching, but it's not far from, I mean, both of those ways of teaching, intensive field teaching, and at the other extreme, intensive online teaching are kind of at the edge of the core curriculum at present.
So besides the already stated role as a spearhead for change in curriculum, I think that the learning community could be also used as a platform to share resources. For instance, in a very practical way, when me as an instructor, I develop a particular module for genetics that has an important active learning component. I can share that with other people at the UCS, the UC system, and ask for their opinion and their evaluation. And in the same manner, I can implement whatever is shared through the community to improve my teaching itself. And also, I think that besides that, another very important avenue of that we can explore for the faculty learning community will be the collaboration to create grants, right? So we have this opportunity to not only submit grants together as the power, harvesting the power, the human power of the UC system, but also to serve as a platform of peer reviewing, right? So if I write a grant for the first time of education in biology, we have a room full of experts that already have been successful at submitting these grants. So maybe they can peer review my grant and give me advice on how to do that. So I think that those are the 3 main things that come to mind when I hear faculty learning community for UC.
I just wanted to say I really echo your idea about sharing materials and things that we've developed. I mean, we all put so much effort into developing those things, and it just seems like such a shame to not just, hand it over to somebody else and say, here you go, do what you want with it. I was wondering what people kind of thought that would look like. Is it uploading it to a server? Is it having some kind of in-person kind of meeting where we can share ideas? Is it a mixture of those things?
So that kind of gets at the heart again of what I was talking about, focusing on what we get out of the system, because the sharing of materials is certainly a wonderful thing about the education community in general. And as soon as you put something on a server, that's great, and everybody across the whole country or the world can use it. That's good. But what we have is proximity and the ability to have face-to-face, real contact with each other, perhaps even visit each other's classes and so forth. And if we were well funded in this area, there could be lots of facilitation of that.
I think the other idea about grant proposals is really critical, because I think it's something that, as a researcher, I mean, if we want to do something, if we have a dream, we write a grant proposal. And I think that the tradition in education was not that there was money from the state, and that's disappearing. And so I think that that forming, because I mean, like I said, it's frustrating writing some of these grants, certainly not grant proposals, not from HHMI, because there it's a lot of blue sky, and it's more like writing an NIH or whatever. But I mean, in some of the other agencies, I mean, are just, like I said, it's 7 pages of detailed outline of 1, A, B, C, and you got to write your proposal like that. So I think that for those of us that have gone through this process, we could certainly mentor other people, and also what's required more and more are statistics or is data. And I think that for all of the system to get this together would be certainly an efficiency. Because like I said, if we could show them that we could generate money, and I'm telling you, we could generate money. It's not hard. It really isn't. It's frustrating, but it's not hard. And we have the demographics. We have the proximity, the demographics. We have outstanding labs and outstanding researchers. So I really would like to see that be a major part of the communities, is to, you know, make sure that we all have the mentoring, have the resources, you know, and are able to push our upper administration to you know, collect the data that's needed.
I think that's really a wonderful idea. I think for having a centralized assessment and statistical analysis available, and that also gives the possibility of deriving a common metric, which is a real problem with like a lot of studies that have been done. One that was just discussed at this last HHMI meeting, the famous one that was published recently, the meta study showing the effect of active learning on Freeman. Sorry, I was blanking on Freeman's name. And the problem there is that the metrics weren't common. It's very hard to compare the studies. And so if we had a really useful resource like that, it would also allow for those kind of larger scale studies, the common metrics being used.
Yeah, so my background's in evaluation and assessment, and I'm probably the only sociologist in the room, which is a little bit odd. But I bet your institutional research offices have a lot of statistics. You've got evaluation offices, assessment offices. So those should definitely be folks to think about reaching out to involve. Because a lot of times I found in my assessment work, when you get called in to evaluate something at the end, there's only so much you can do. But if you're sort of built into the process, and you can do that survey in the second week of the program, right? That's the best time to gather that data. So just another resource you can draw on that probably already exists on all your campuses.
So in my prior position, I was in the CNAS Dean's office. When we write for letters for outside letters for promotion, people always comment about the research. And then they say something like, well, I can't really comment on the person's teaching, but I saw them give a presentation at a conference, so it must be pretty good. I think that a role for the faculty learning community could be within the UC system to help provide substantive feedback as part of some of those letters for promotion evaluations.
I have another question. I think I've actually had to go to my last question because you've covered it. I was wondering, what should be sort of the deliverables or outcomes of the HHMI UC FLC at the end of this four-year project? I mean, at the end of this, what would you envision as some deliverable, concrete deliverables? And I think we heard some great ideas, but what are achievable deliverables we might contemplate to achieve some of these goals?
I think Sue just wrote them all down.
Yeah.
I would love to see some system-wide data where we know what's happening at all the campus with respect to activities that target different populations of students, what's working, what's not working, how it's working. And I think it's good when there are things it's useful when there's things in the literature. But what often happens at different institutions is we say, okay, but what is UC blank doing? Because that's what we think of as our comparison. So it would be really useful to have a common document or series of documents that lay out all of these things that we've been talking about today. And I think along those lines, I just want to highlight one interesting document that was recently put together by the Dean of Life Sciences at UCLA, and many of you know Sylvia Hurtado, who did this amazing tour de force analysis of the different ways that teaching practices are affecting different students at UCLA, even to the point of looking at things like what classes are graded on a curve, what difference does it make for the students in those classes? So I think that's, I know it's available on some websites, so it might be useful to people, but that kind of thing for the whole system would be really, really useful.
And so I'll pick up on that. Sylvia and I and a group of other folks are authors on a paper talking about what we need to do differently in order to diversify STEM. And one of the things, and Mika Estrada was the lead author, but at the top of our list was holding institutions accountable through the use of these data, disaggregated data for different groups, and their success, their differential success in our STEM fields. And so I think that maybe the faculty learning community can be a push for that, for a push for institutional accountability throughout the UC system with these disaggregated student success reports, because those are really, really hard to get. And for those of us who have written student development proposals, those are really tough data to get. You have to go to a number of different repositories and put those data together. And so we could push for that.
I wonder if there's how much support there would be for like a position, somebody hired by UCOP, for example, to coordinate a lot of these things. Is that a good thing, or do we still want, do we want to focus on our own institutional assessment? Would it be worthwhile to have a central sort of person who could do all this?
If I could have a little data point to add here. So I attended the UCOP spring meeting where the online ILTI program was discussed. And I was very perplexed that even though that program was centrally managed and the money was distributed from the Office of President, very little data came back. They knew the number of students, they knew the number of classes, they knew almost nothing about student success, because all that data belonged to campuses, and campuses may or may not release that to the central.
I was going to just make one comment about this deliverables. We're going to have a website within a few weeks, and the one question I had was, I was going to develop a web form where you could report your projects, and so we'd have a centralized list of all the UC projects, because trying to figure out what's actually happening in the UC is not actually that easy. So, and you would give us a URL to your website, so we would actually know what's happening. Does that sound interesting and valuable to anybody in the room? That'd be my question.
Hi, this is Sarah Eichhorn from UC Irvine. We actually just last week got an NSF Includes Conference Network grant collectively with UCSD and UC Davis. And as part of that proposal, we had that we would create a website database system for people to upload exactly what you just described, and also start talking about some common metrics, ways of showing our students success in a common language so that you can compare these programs in a kind of cohesive manner. So there'd be some sort of upload form that you fill out about the base information of the program, and then some places to provide optional information or link out to a page as you described. This is an open invitation. I will actually be asking the organizers for a list of the attendees, but we will have a conference in May, details to be determined since we just got the grant last week, but we are going to be having a California conversation on inclusive excellence in STEM.
I'm happy to put a link to your website if you do it instead of me. One of us.
Yeah, I was going to say, on this particular topic, I think one outcome would be at the end of however long it takes, 2 years, 3 years, when this community is up and somewhat stable, a UC-wide learning community, we should tell the Office of the President what we need. My experience, perhaps others, with the oversight and management of the CalTeach program does not inspire confidence in their ability to gather those data and to think about what they want out of a program like this in a long-term way. And so I think if we went forward and said, here's the kind of support we need, and yeah, you need to hire somebody who does X, and if we let them know what X was, I think that would be one tangible outcome of this.
It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. She's got a plane, so yeah. I'm a little bit of an online course skeptic, so I was a little nervous, not just hearing what you said and hearing what Paul said about the Office of the President's ability to assess what it's doing, like we're all forced to do, and gladly so we understand what we're doing. We have all these projects, but in the background, other online courses are being used in our curriculum now to satisfy prerequisites of, so we need to track, if they're not going to track that, we should be tracking that additionally as we track, our other students doing other things. Because we're the learning community, right? So we got to track that stuff.
Talking of tracking and online things, how many people here know what is a learning record store? Anybody know? So learning record store is kind of a database system that will get information from your learning management system, your Moodles or whatever kind of student interactions. And it doesn't really record the grades. It more records of what the student responses were for specific questions. And that is something that if we can kind of take advantage of, everybody sending their, let's say, intro biology or intro biochemistry type questions and answers to a common learning record store. Software can sort out what are the misconceptions, what are the things that students understand, what are the things that we don't do very well. And one intention that I have over the probably next half year or so is to get the learning record store going for our campus. Which means that you guys are welcome to contribute to your data if you are in the position of sending such data.
Any other questions for our panel?
So I would like to ask the group, what are your concerns as we're starting off? You've been involved with any number of efforts in the past, projects that sounded good at the front end. What are your concerns, and what advice would you give us so that we can address those concerns early on so that this effort will less likely be derailed?
So one of the main concerns that I have is that we had a meeting a year ago that was addressing this same thing, right? That was addressing how to create this meeting, and we had a list of actionable items that we were going to do, and none of those items got done. So, except of this wonderful meeting, obviously. But there were other things that we said as a group that were important to do, and we didn't. So I think that some sort of way of tracking and keeping holding responsible people for the actionable items that are going to come out of this meeting, I think is going to be critical. And a way to assess that and report it, maybe, I think it will be critical.
Do you recall some examples of? Yes.
We have an email. I can send you the email. Among other things, we mentioned that web page where we're going to use as a repository for some of these shareable resources was going to be put up, and that never happened. So, yeah.
I agree. I mean, the meeting, I think, had a different purpose because it was sort of a piggyback meeting with the Berkeley meeting. So it wasn't our first annual meeting. This was. So it was only the full work. And I had before about HHMI sort of throwing this thing at us when we were just getting our research university grants going, that it really was overwhelming. And I would say that we should take this as the start, especially where there's more input. And I think we're all sort of committed to we're all ready for this now, I think. Right. So I would say you're completely right. But, we just have too much to do. But I think now it would be public embarrassment. I mean, we're saying this in front of people from all of the UCs, and so we have to do it, right? And we want to do it.
And you're on video.
Oh, we're on video too. We can't use this excuse anymore, but I'm happy to say that all the other mini grant programs that HMI put out there are equally behind. So I've been involved in 3. They're all way behind, I mean, for the same reasons.
So, I don't know if everybody can hear me. Probably not. Sorry. Hi. So the only other, I guess, concern I would have is how often will we have to meet to be able to get some of these things done that we want to get done? Not that we don't want to, but I'm sure that all of us have other commitments and other obligations that may make it very difficult for us to meet more often than once a year. And therefore, is once a year enough?
Well, I think the grant covers, I think, at least 2 things. And one is the annual meeting, which I agree with you isn't often enough. But the other are visits, inter-campus visits. So I think that's part of what we're going to discuss. So the co-PIs on this grant are going to meet at dinner tonight. And we're going to come up with, we're going to sort of take this all in and have outcomes, you know, that we're going to have to do. And also to start looking at intermediate things. Like you said, I mean, we're going to have to start having visits from one campus to another. And we have the money in the grant. That's the good news. You know, we're actually, we're looking for ways to spend money. Okay. So even though we've done nothing, we haven't spent any money, right?
I just want to say, I think this has been a really cool meeting. And I think, you know, everybody in the room probably shares a vague or maybe not so vague dissatisfaction with situations surrounding our efforts to make teaching more important and better and more cost effective and more just. And that's a cool thing that we're all here. And what we need to do is identify those pressure points where we can take a pointed stick and poke UCOP or poke whoever and start to get attention and action and money to flow towards this problem so we can structure a solution that's long-standing and becomes, you know, an integrated part of what the University of California does.
I'd want to ask everybody just to help us tonight when we get together at dinner, because we really haven't covered that piece of it really. What sorts of, let's say, connections, visits on small scales as opposed to a whole meeting like this, do you think would be useful? Something between campuses that where this funding would be available, either the mechanism for that or what actually, what would it look like? What sorts of things, you know, people teaching the same class in 2 places or doing, you know, whatever it is. What kind of suggestions would you have that we could discuss at dinner about that?
I would say I'd love to have situations where I can be embedded to somebody else's classroom for a couple of days, learn from their best practices, point out, hey, I could do that better than you do.
So embedded means also participating? I guess it doesn't have to, but
it means physically being on other campus, physically being in the classroom, either running the class for them or running next to them, or kind of being present when the class is happening.
Should have money for that.
Oh, hi, Justin Schaefer from UC Irvine. I think, like Brian talked about before, in order to further integrate the LPSOEs throughout the UCs, it'd be great to invite all faculty, but especially the PSOEs, to come to other campuses to maybe do 2 things. One, to share our research, which we don't typically get avenues to do that within our own departmental seminars. And then second, to give a workshop on maybe some of the teaching practices we've been using, and to show you, for instance, I teach intro bio to Irvine, show you how I do it at Irvine, and maybe you could, you know, share practices that you could use at your campus courses too.
Would you like to be a wandering troubadour and present at the various camps?
If my wife lets me, sure, yeah.
Hi, so one of the things, my phone's ringing for some reason here. Oh, I can't answer this, okay. So one of the things that I think would be useful are things that are non-threatening, but are quite local, that could be implemented at different UCs if someone could just share what it took and what the benefits were and what the pitfalls were. So I'll give an example. We have at UC Riverside an undergraduate research journal. We publish about a dozen to 15 articles authored by undergraduates with their research mentor. and they're like, a dozen pages or so in Word. And we publish annually. We're in our 11th year. And this is a terrific outcome because we generally market towards students that are maybe juniors or even seniors, and they'll get an article published in this nice, beautiful color journal that gets also posted electronically online. And this is something that's just at UCR, right? So maybe UCSB could have an undergraduate research journal, maybe any of the other UCs that don't have one. Pardon me? There are UC-wide ones. There are other sort of those types of things. And if people want to implement something like that, then someone who's doing it at one of the UCs could, go and give a talk at one of the others and see what kind of support do you need from faculty, what do you need from administrative offices and so on as an engine to get the thing working. That's the kind of thing.
Yeah, I just have a couple of comments. One is, I think it's phenomenal to find out that there's a funding available to pay for people potentially to go and visit other campuses and find out what interesting, innovative things people are doing. But there needs to be some way for people to find out what's really going on, some kind of directory, clearinghouse website, some way that a person who, say, teaches genetics can look and see if there are people out there who are doing something innovative that they'd like to get a closer look at. So I don't know how to really make that kind of resource, put that together and make it available to people. But I also think that it's going to be really important to have a designated leader or leadership team on each campus. Maybe this is already part of this. What I can say, I'm, sort of an educational leader in life science at UCSD. This is the first that I've heard about this. So I don't know if there's somebody at UCSD who's, integrally involved in this, but if there is, they're not doing anything. So
no, far it's just been the 4 HHMI programs.
So in order to kind of make it possible for people at all the campuses to kind of know that this initiative exists and how they might benefit from it, there's got to be some way to, there's a person or a group of people who've committed to being the liaison and really participating in a core sort of planning process so that their campus can also, get something out of this.
You all join the FLC by showing up. You're in. If you don't want to be in, you have to tell me you don't want to be in. So you're all in the FLC. And definitely, as I said, we're going to put up a website. We'll probably have the links to all of what you see. And those webinars I was talking about, seems like those will be recorded and posted too. So these are specific examples, the nuts and bolts. It'd be kind of nice if somebody would present the nuts and bolts and the problems in those webinars, and we'd have an actual recording of it. And we'll have a link of all those recordings on our website when we create them. So that'll be kind of a resource. And
I think also that we should be proactive with UCOP. And I know, maybe to talk to Amy Dorr, who is, as provost, very interested, UCLA faculty member for me, very interested in science education issues and education issues. And I think maybe if we start that conversation, keep them informed, because, Napolitano may not be president in a year. I mean, she may be a cabinet member, who knows? And we should maybe try to take advantage of her interest in education, because we don't know who will be next.
I just have one question. Are there any UC campuses that offer a graduate degree in science education specifically?
UC San Diego has a PhD program in math and science education. And then there's also a PhD and an EDD program housed in education studies.
They might be mostly K-12. Is that right? Or is it?
We have one at UC Santa Cruz. This is Lisa Hunter from UC Santa Cruz. We have one at UC Santa Cruz.
And our math and science education PhD program is actually a mixture of K through 24 or whatever it is, and also requires it's very discipline based because all students come in with a master's degree in either a math or science discipline.
If there's more, it's 5 o'clock now. I don't know, Rolf, were you going to say something about the survey? I think this is an important thing, the post-meeting survey.
Yes, I was going to say something about the survey. There's going to be a survey. You're going to get an email. The survey is currently under development, so it's not ready. Probably 2 weeks. We're going to hound you to respond. Not that many times, but more than once. And it's very important that you give us feedback on what you think about the meeting. HHMI will want to probably know how successful this meeting is, so as you can imagine, we need to know. It'll come from somebody who works at our CSEP, CSEP, which stands for something. But Center, yeah, what was that?
The Center for Science and Engineering Partnership.
There you go. And so you will get an email from that person, and from me, but it'll be housed at their servers to collect the data.
I have just one more question. I don't know if this is inappropriate or not, but how many would come back to this meeting, first of all, if it was in Southern California, and second of all, if it's in Northern California? So first question, how many would come back if there were a meeting in a year in Southern California? Okay, looks pretty good. And what if it were in Northern California? How many would feel like they could make it? Okay, this is good. Wine country.
But I think those responses, reflect the fact that we're in Southern California, and it's probably biased towards people who found it easy to come in Southern California.
Very good, Manny. And on that note.
I think it's specifically Santa Cruz. So isn't that the question?
I was curious, but it sounds like a lot of people would be interested in going north as well. So
I think I don't mind going to Santa Cruz.
I don't know.
We just want to make sure you get reimbursed.
So there's 2 ways to get reimbursed. One, if you stayed in the hotel in the Hyatt, there's a form we need you to fill out, and maybe I can pull it up. You should have received it in an email. If not, I have some printouts somewhere. We need that returned rather quickly, and no, I'd have to. I'm not sure. I have to pull up my RML, but so you'll need to fill that out, and all of your expenses from that, and they will come to our department, our travel coordinator, Melissa. Her email is on that form. There's a stack outside, I think, on the table. That form needs to be filled out and sent to Melissa. She will enter everything, and then you'll get an email from her. Even if you're not getting reimbursed, she needs you to acknowledge that everything is correct. And please do it in a timely manner so that the POs get cleared. If you traveled but did not stay in the hotel, you will go through your travel coordinator in your local department, your receipts, whatever your e-travel system is. Then that person will coordinate with our department for an inter-campus transfer of funds. Okay, so if you stayed in the hotel, it'll come from UCR. If you did not stay in the hotel, it'll come from your local campus, and it'll be handled behind the scenes. Any questions, contact Christopher or myself, and we'll try to get this done as quickly as possible. Thanks. I think that's all.
I really want to thank all of you. the first time I went to a science education meeting, I think it was in like 2005 or 2006, and I was just really amazed how much fun it was. And almost all the meetings that I go to are just so much more fun than research meetings. And I think it's because, you know, we all teach and we just don't talk about it mostly. And it's nice to be able to talk about it. And I think that this is, you know, I'm an optimist, but I think that this is really the timing is really, really good. There's a major focus towards quality of teaching and education, so that and it is starting to be valued, I think, more and more. And I think you know, UCs are you know, a leader in this area, because we are the major system training the diversity of this country, and it's been noted in the New York Times, and it's been several times. And I think we're being looked to as leaders. And so I really want to thank you. This has been, I thought, just a wonderful meeting, and just the diversity of everything that was displayed here was just really invigorating. So we will be in touch, and please contact us. So we're going to meet tonight, and we'll put out some kind of a summary because we have to meet as a PIs, or what are co-PIs, and PIs are teams. And yes, we do have teams, and I think the question, Lori, that you said is I don't see any reason why this, you know, shouldn't be UC-wide, and there should be teams designated for all the UCs. There is enough money in this grant to cover travel by at least a team of people from each of the campuses. So certainly to the next annual meeting. And then the intra-campus things also. I mean, like I said, because in addition, and at some point we may, the money that was put in was matching funds from each of the 4 universities to cover the cost of the annual meetings. So, but we have extra money. So, I mean, we are looking for things actually to do with the funds. So, you know, expanding it to all the UCs, I don't see, you know, expanding it to actual travel by personnel. I mean, so basically we will be able to cover the cost of the next 3 future meetings of, you know, all people from all UCs, at least a core of you know, at least a core team. We could promise that. But we'll let you, so at some point we'll talk to each of the UC about designating, you know, some kind of core of 3 or 4 people, whether it's rotating, whether whatever, but I think it's absolutely essential, you know, because there's so much going on at you know, UCSD, at UCI, people that are, you know, campuses that are not official members of this grant. But we really would love, it's more powerful if we expand this. So thank you all, and hope to see you sooner than next year, right? Yeah, Jim, wait. Good answer. All right. Thank you all.